Here we go. Here we go. On today's show, we're going to do this, I promise you. Speaker Mike Johnson telling reporters that he agrees when Trump called the Epstein files a hoax. Speaker Johnson fighting a discharge petition that would force a vote in the House of Representatives on a bill demanding the Department of Justice release all of the Epstein files. Johnson calling that vote unnecessary since we have Jim Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, investigating the entire Epstein case. Comer last week claimed that Donald Trump has been thoroughly exonerated because Ghislaine Maxwell, in her two-day proffer interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche last month, called Trump a perfect gentleman. And she didn't say that because she wants a pardon. Sure, she pimped girls to be raped for Jeffrey Epstein, but Ghislaine Maxwell draws the line at angling for special treatment from the Justice Department. She can be trusted. Johnson, seen here yelling at his Johnson, added that Trump did nothing wrong. Trump, he says, has clean hands because, according to Speaker Johnson, Trump threw Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago after hearing reports that Epstein was being creepy with a member of the club's daughter. Countering Trump's claim, of course, that he stopped being friendly with Epstein after discovering the convicted predator had been poaching his underage spa attendants and hiring them to work instead at Epstein's mansion. Johnson then made an unhinged claim that Trump was actually an FBI informer who assisted in the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. Just make shit up. Speaker Johnson and a bipartisan group of House members met with Epstein's survivors, or at least some of the survivors, earlier this week. Johnson saying their stories infuriated him. Yeah, of course they do. If you're trying to protect Donald Trump, of course their stories would infuriate you. Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who signed the discharge petition demanding a full release of the Epstein files, despite Trump asking her not to, stormed out of Johnson's meeting with Epstein survivors in tears because it's always about Nancy. She claimed the stories of the Epstein survivors triggered her own experience with sexual abuse. I'm going to assume her own experience with sexual abuse is being the victim of it, although you never know with Nancy Mace. Mace, a transphobic bully, is running for governor of South Carolina. She called Trump a hero last week in the Jeffrey Epstein story because he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. And she said because Donald Trump has always stood up for the rights of women. Yeah, just ask any of the nearly 30 women and girls who have brought forward credible allegations against Trump, accusing him of sexual assault and or rape, depending what state you live in. If you live in New York, Trump is guilty of sexual assault or found civilly liable for sexually assault. In another state, he would have been found civilly liable for rape. Marjorie Taylor Greene, along with Nancy Mace, is one of a handful of House Republicans who signed the discharge petition calling for the release of the Epstein files. She is now calling on Donald Trump to meet with Epstein's victims. Greene said she will personally arrange for the Epstein victims to meet Trump in the Oval Office, but so far Donald Trump hasn't accepted Marjorie's offer, probably because he's already met Epstein's victims years ago. Why does he have to see them again, especially now that they're way too old for him? NBC News reporting Saturday night that the Department of Justice is trying to keep secret the names of two Epstein associates, friends, business partners who received payments from Epstein in 2018. One wire transfer was for $100,000 and another for $250,000. NBC reporting the judge who presided over Epstein's criminal trial before he died has kept all the records sealed. NBC reporting these wire transfers are part of the sealed documents. And the wire transfers were made days after the Miami Herald broke the story on the extent to Epstein's abuse and the story on how the Justice Department made a sweetheart deal with Epstein's lawyers the first time he was caught for raping children. The Trump Justice Department is reportedly trying to keep the names of these two Epstein friends, associates, who receive these cash transfers. They want to keep it secret in order to protect their privacy. Well, this is pure conjecture. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those associates was Steve Bannon, who was doing consulting work with and for Jeffrey Epstein right about the time the Miami Herald broke the story. Pam Bondi, the current Attorney General, served as Florida's Attorney General from 2011 until 2019. And during this period, several Epstein victims and their lawyers stepped forward and they began filing lawsuits against Jeffrey Epstein in the state of Florida. But the Florida Attorney General's office, that would be Pam Bondi, showed no interest in pursuing a criminal complaint, so it stayed in the civil courts. Donald Trump is appealing a lower court's ruling on one of two judgments against him in the E. Jean Carroll trial. The Second Circuit Court previously rejected Trump's motion to throw out a $5 million verdict when a Manhattan jury found him civilly liable for sexually assaulting and then defaming E. Jean Carroll. Trump this week said he would bring that judgment to the Supreme Court. Trump is also asking the United States Supreme Court to overturn a judgment where a jury ordered Trump to pay Carroll an additional $83.3 million. The two juries said that Trump had sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll, but the judge in that case, Judge Kaplan, put into writing twice that the jury found Trump civilly liable for rape in common law parlance. In other words, had this trial taken place in another state that defines rape differently, he would have been found civilly liable for rape. Instead, in New York State, which draws some kind of weird distinction between sexual assault and rape, he was found civilly liable for sexual assault. Workers inside the Pentagon are now taking down lettering referring to the Department of Defense after Donald Trump ordered it to be renamed the War Department. You can see they're putting up new lettering. It's now the War Department, signing an executive order renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War. Trump was asked, do you need permission from Congress to rename a cabinet-level agency? Trump said, I don't care, adding, quote, we're going with it, and we're going with it very strongly. David Sanger, writing in the New York Times yesterday, says that Harry Truman in 1949 signed a law changing the Department of War to the Defense Department, and that law was passed by Congress. It was not an executive order. So I believe Trump is in violation of the law. I guess that would be the first time. I don't think he's ever ignored the law before. You can't change a name of an agency unless you pass a law. An executive order won't cut it. While signing the order changing the name to the War Department, Trump said, since World War II, America has never fought a war to win. Really? Okay, and by changing the name to the Department of War, that's going to fix everything. Actually, we fought a lot of wars to win. During Vietnam, we dropped more bombs on Indochina than we did on all the wars we had fought before combined. And that includes Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Dresden, Berlin. You add up all the bombs we dropped during World War II. We dropped more on Vietnam, and we still lost. We weren't fighting that war with one arm tied behind our back. We sent in 500,000 troops. We lost. Okay? Meanwhile, there are reports of a major buildup of military materiel and soldiers near Venezuela, which Donald Trump claims invaded us. Did you know that? Somebody should tell Venezuela they invaded us. 10 F-35 stealth fighters have been relocated to Puerto Rico after 2 Venezuela jet fighters in the southern Caribbean Sea Thursday performed a flyby over the Jason Dunham, a U.S.-guided missile destroyer. This incident took place 2 days after the U.S. military claimed it killed 11 Tren de Aragua gang members on board a Venezuelan boat that Trump claimed was heading to the United States carrying drugs. Reporting on the U.S. attack has been severely hampered by the Pentagon's complete lack of transparency. The New York Times reporting they don't even know if the people on board the ship were given an opportunity to surrender before being fired upon. Trump says 11 were killed. If they were not offered an opportunity to surrender before firing started, that is a war crime. The BBC reporting the United States is not a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, but under U.S. law, the military is strictly forbidden from using lethal force unless our soldiers' lives are in danger. You can't fire on a boat without first offering them an opportunity to surrender if they're not firing on you. So far, the Pentagon has offered zero evidence that the people on board were gang members or were smuggling drugs. The New York Times broke the news Friday of a failed attempt by U.S. Navy SEALs back in 2019 when Donald Trump was president. He ordered them to plant devices that would intercept North Korean telecommunications. That's according to the New York Times, with Trump telling reporters, I don't know anything about this. I could look into it, but I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about it. I'm hearing about it for the very first time. Really, you're hearing about it for the first time, and you're qualified to be commander-in-chief. You think that makes you look better? That you claim you don't know about this failed Navy SEAL incursion? Trump also signed an executive order that would punish any country that wrongfully detains a U.S. citizen. The BBC reporting the Foley Foundation, an advocacy group, has estimated that at least 54 Americans are being wrongfully detained in 17 countries in 2024. That doesn't include roughly the 2.2 million Americans wrongly detained here in the United States. Most of them never even had a trial. Most of them are nonviolent offenders. Well, Trump on Saturday taking to social media saying Chicago is about to find out why he renamed it the Department of War. He's literally saying, I'm waging war on Chicago, and then paraphrasing a line from Apocalypse Now. He wrote, I love the smell of deportations in the morning. And as you can see, it's somebody doctored a photo of Trump dressed as the Robert Duvall character, who in Apocalypse Now is clearly insane. So he's celebrating an insane character from Apocalypse Now, and he thinks this is clever. Chicopolypse Now. Chicopolypse Now. Brilliant. I don't know about the Robert Duvall character. If you've ever seen the movie Apocalypse Now, I see Trump as a different character from Apocalypse Now. I see him more as the Marlon Brando character, if the Marlon Brando, I think it was Kurtz, if Kurtz never served our military and was even more dangerous than he was. The Merchant of Chaos had suggested earlier in the week he would forego sending troops into Chicago and instead send them to New Orleans, where, unlike the Democratic governor of Illinois and the Democratic mayor of Chicago, the Republican governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, says he welcomes the troops being sent in to Louisiana. Governor Landy, is seen here standing by Attorney General Pam Bondi on Wednesday after the Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola Angola began detaining migrants for ICE. They've made documentaries and movies about this penal colony, Angola. This week, 51 men rounded up by ICE were brought to Louisiana lockup. That's what they're calling it, Louisiana lockup, which is inside the Angola prison. Most of you know this was once a slave plantation. And then after the Civil War, it became a penal colony, forcing black prisoners to work the fields thanks to the loophole in the 13th Amendment that freed the slaves but allowed states like Louisiana to make prisoners work for free. So just lock them up by any means necessary, and you got slaves again. Many of the freed slaves in Louisiana were arrested for loitering, vagrancy, the vagrancy laws of the Jim Crow South, and they began working the same fields at Angola that they were forced to work before the Civil War. The jail continues to be called an overcrowded torture chamber where prisoners are denied medical care, constantly placed in solitary confinement for no reason, which is why Amnesty International calls Angola, quote, cruelty by design. That's where we're sending the migrants. That's where Jeff Landry, the governor of Florida, is saying, here, have at it. Use our prison, Angola. And yes, Donald Trump, send in the troops because we have to fight crime. We have to fight crime. Well, he should know about crime, Jeff Landry. On Friday, the Louisiana Board of Ethics decided not to further investigate Governor Jeff Landry, who has been accused of accepting 19 free trips totaling $15,000 from a donor while Landry was governor and Louisiana State Attorney General. Sounds like a possible Supreme Court pick to me. Sounds perfect for Donald Trump to name this guy to the Supreme Court. Governor Landry agreed to pay a $900 fine in exchange for these ethics charges getting dropped after his lawyers argued that the disclosure forms were confusing. The governor of Louisiana says the disclosure forms on accepting gifts were confusing. What's confusing about you can't accept gifts from donors? It has nothing to do with confusing disclosure forms. And if you're confused by disclosure forms, maybe you're not qualified to be governor, Jeff Landry. Thanks to a change in the law last year, Louisiana Governor Landry was able to appoint nine of the 15 members of the ethics board established to investigate people like the governor of Louisiana. So what are the odds that they would decide to drop the charges against him, make him pay $900? Amazing. More than half of the people sitting on the ethics board in Louisiana, he appointed them. Landry was disciplined several times by that same ethics board over the years for failing to disclose other gifts, and he was once found to be using campaign donations to pay off a car loan. I guess the car loan was confusing as well. Never fails, the politicians who promise to be the toughest on crime always end up being the biggest criminals. Earlier in the week, a judge who ruled Trump's deployment of troops into Los Angeles was illegal. That judge also accused Trump of attempting to create his own national police force. Have I mentioned that Donald Trump is a convicted felon? First president ever to be a convicted felon. The judge ruled Trump sending troops in over the objection of state and local elected officials violates the Posse Comitatus Act. His ruling was paused by an appeals court. 300 troops still remain in Los Angeles as that deployment winds itself down. And if you're having trouble keeping track of all these court rulings, it's not you, it's the system. Even judges are complaining that they can't keep track of who ruled what, when, and why. One day, Alligator Alcatraz is ordered to be closed. The next day, it's ordered to be open. We have an appeals process that finds its way eventually to the Supreme Court. This is what Trump means by flooding the zone. Every 4 hours, it's a new unconstitutional executive order or Trump ignoring a previous court's ruling. He's no longer looking for loopholes in the system. Now he's just ignoring the courts. As I said on a previous show, the Washington Post performed an analysis of 160 major court orders this year against the Trump White House. And so far, according to the Washington Post, the Trump administration has ignored 1/3 of these court orders. The other 2/3 they're appealing. Thousands of Washington, D.C. residents marched on Saturday to protest Trump's recent deployment of troops into their city. 100 people stood outside the Washington, D.C. police headquarters, screaming at ICE agents who are working there now. No reports of any Subway sandwiches being fired. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. Leave a comment, and don't forget to share this God, it's Feldman, not Ferdman. My nephew Leonard is doing some of the graphics for the show. Some of you have noticed that the graphics have gotten a little sophisticated. My nephew Leonard is doing them. My sister's son, for some reason, thinks my last name is Ferdman, not Feldman. Donald Trump announcing he will not attend this year's G20 summit, which is being held in South Africa. Trump says he doesn't approve of that country's fictitious persecution of white farmers who the United States government just offered political asylum to. Why? Because they're white. Their farms are not being taken from them. But Trump is accepting white Southern Afrikaners into the country, while at the same time depriving temporary protected legal status to Haitian migrants who are escaping genuine political persecution. If I didn't know any better, I'd think Trump is a racist. Wait, I do know any better. He is a racist. Every day, there are at least 5 announcements coming out of the White House, specifically and gratuitously targeting the black community. The Trump National Doral Golf Club in Miami, Florida, will play host to next year's G20 summit. At least that's according to Donald Trump. He announced he's not going to the one in South Africa, but I'm going to be hosting the G20 next year at my Doral Country Club in Miami. And making the announcement, Trump said, quote, "Everybody wants it there. It's right next to the airport. It's the best location. It's beautiful. Everybody wants it there." Yeah. Read the health report on the Doral. The bed bugs, how the food, how they don't have hot water in the kitchen. Look at this. In the Oval Office, he has a huge billboard promoting next year's Miami summit, where he stands to make millions from 20 countries by holding the summit at his golf resort. The New York Times reporting that the law, as well as the emoluments clause inside the Constitution, forbid the president from doing this. You might remember he tried to do this during the first Trump administration, and then he was told, well, it's against the law and it violates the emoluments clause. But the Times reporting that Trump is, let's go back there. There we go. Trump is probably, according to the New York Times, he thinks he's able to break these laws and violate the emoluments clause, thanks to the Supreme Court's ruling last year that a president can't be prosecuted for breaking the law if he breaks the law while performing an official act as president. You know, he can't, even if you read that decision, he could be prosecuted. It's not an official act as president to make millions off the G20 summit. And he would have been prosecuted had Harris won. It's called prosecutorial discretion. Who's in charge? Who's in charge? That determines who gets prosecuted and who goes to prison. Prosecutorial discretion. The new jobs report for August is in, and despite Trump firing the woman who compiled the numbers because he didn't like the job numbers for July, employment continues to grow at a snail's pace with only 22,000 jobs created in August. The Bureau of Labor Statistics saying the number of job openings right now is at the lowest it's been in 10 months. In December of last year, back when Joe Biden was president, remember him? Back in December, the economy added 323,000 new jobs. Last month, 22,000 new jobs. Some indices suggesting job growth relative to the overall size of our economy is growing at its slowest rate in 60 years. That's if you exclude recessions, and some economists suggesting we may soon enter a recession. I know that last sentence was very confusing. Let me just clear. Job growth is sluggish, and we'd have to be in a recession for it to get any worse. That's basically what economists are saying. Manufacturing also reporting a slowdown for the sixth straight month. Manufacturing has contracted, and so has construction on new plants, which are down nearly 7% since last year. A new survey showing 80% of American consumers saying inflation is getting worse and that they plan to spend less over the next 6 months, less during the holidays. The CEO of McDonald's now complaining inflation is cutting down the number of low-income customers at his fast food restaurants, McDonald's, which is responsible, one of the leading, McDonald's, and this is a fact, McDonald's is one of the leading causes of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, not to mention global warming from cows and Donald Trump belching. It's not farts, it's belching. It's the cow belches. Everybody thinks it's cow farts. It's cow belching. McDonald's announcing they're bringing back the extra value meal, which will save about 15% for Americans stupid enough to eat the garbage at McDonald's. But a lot of fast food restaurants are beginning to lower prices. Here's Donald Trump taking advantage of the value meal at KKK. This is not KFC, it's KKK. He prefers eating the fried chicken at KKK, probably because he owns the place. That's Donald Trump dressed as the Colonel. Donald Trump's KKK chicken. Bring home a bucket before you kick it. This is the mop-up. Leonard? It's David. It's Feldman, not Ferdman. There we go. That's nice. Good job, Leonard. The David Feldman Show. That's better. Thanks for finding me. For some reason, my sister's son thinks my last name is Ferdman. Please share this episode with your friends, your relatives, your loved ones. Hit the like button. People are having trouble with the notifications for some reason. I don't know why. So you may have to re-up on the notification. I don't even understand what notifications are. Subscribe to this channel. And, okay. So earlier I showed you Donald Trump enjoying a value meal at one of his KKK chicken franchises. His secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices is actually 50 when you include the various strains of botulism and listeria, and that recipe is guarded. Read the health report at the Doral, at Trump's Doral. The 19 countries that are going to be coming for the G20 to the Doral, read the health reports on the Doral. So nobody knows what exactly President Trump puts in his chicken at the KKK franchise. In fact, they're not even sure if it's chicken. But one thing we do know, whatever meat it is, it's not lab grown. Trump is adamantly opposed to lab grown meat. Not because he thinks it isn't healthy. No, the president is opposed to lab grown meat because of the cruelty. There isn't any. In Texas, that state's ban on lab-grown meat went into effect on Monday. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed the ban on lab-grown meat back in June. Lab-grown meat cannot be sold or manufactured in the state of Texas for the next 2 years. That's when the law expires. Several cultivated meat companies filed a lawsuit to overturn that ban, accusing Texas Republicans of creating laws that protect the cattle industry. In 1998, some of you might remember, Oprah was sued by Texas cattle ranchers because she did an episode on mad cow disease. Oprah was sued, accused of violating Texas's food disparagement laws. It's against the law in Texas to libel or slander Texas beef. And that law is still on the books. Oprah ended up winning the case, but still, you're not allowed to disparage beef in Texas. The LGBTQ community, knock yourself out. But not beef. You cannot disparage beef. Florida's ban on lab-grown meat went into effect on July 1st. Florida became the first state to prohibit the manufacturing and sale of cultivated meat. Governor Ron DeSantis signed that law back in May. Anyone caught, I'm not making this up, anyone caught manufacturing or selling lab-grown meat can face 60 days in prison and a $500 fine. The law is being challenged in the courts by attorneys for the cultivated meat industry who claim our Constitution's Commerce Clause prevents individual states from passing agriculture laws that protect their own growers from competitors in other states. I guess cattle ranchers are considered growers. Okay. Well, here at the David Feldman Show, we love lab-grown meat. In fact, I just hired Suzanne as my announcer, and she's cultivated meat. Look at her. She's beautiful. She's easy to work with, never calls in sick, and has a great voice. Here, she's my new announcer. Take it away, Suzanne. Take it away, Suzanne.
And now we return to America's 400,000 and 353rd most popular podcast in the category of moderately left of center. Please welcome David Feldman.
Thank you so much. That's Suzanne. And this is her nearsighted son, Nicholas, who she brings to work. We love having Nicholas around. He has trouble seeing things, gets a little too close into your face. And this is his fraternal twin, Philip, who for some reason is a nervous wreck, and he makes a lot of us nervous here at the David Feldman Show. But it's okay. We support lab-grown meat. In fact, I have a new line of lab-grown meat, and it's very exciting. Let me go big here. I hope you buy this wherever fine lab-grown meat is sold. If you live in Texas or Florida, we'll ship you this lab-grown meat with some abortion pills inside of it. Doesn't that look delicious? Here's some more. Look at that. That is a different cut of lab-grown meat. This one is hearty, savory, robust. Let's look at some more meat here. Look at that. Buttery. Well marbled, And I cannot recommend this one enough. The fat melts during cooking, and it really enriches the flavor. Isn't that one sweet? That's veal. Look how young that lab-grown cultivated meat looks. Lab-grown, less fat, has a milder taste, and it has a grain-finished umami. I don't know. I'm very proud of it. What's this? More veal, fibrous. It's chewy, balanced texture. And what do we have here? That's aged meat. That's been cured. It looks aged. That's been around longer than the other. What else do we have here? This is pork, and it's well marbled, lean, pink and juicy. Now, this is from my Labor Day barbecue for the staff of my show. And I really do. I love inviting all the people who work on this show into my apartment, and I fire up the grill and turn off the sprinklers and the fire alarm, and I just barbecue away for the staff. These are grass-finished beef patties, cultured in a lab, mouth-watering. I mean, how can you resist? Here, watch me. I have video that somebody took at here I am turning them over. How can you not want this? Oh man, my mouth is salivating. These are some more well-marbled cuts of cultured beef, lab-grown beef on the grill. And they have it has a pork-like taste to it. Kosher though. Pig DNA was spliced in to give it a more juicy taste, a more fibrous taste. People can't tell the difference. It's part pork and part beef, lab grown. Nobody can tell the difference between this and an actual ham whose mother was violated by a bull. Same taste. And it's cruelty-free. Watch, we have more video. Watch how I lock in the flavor over the mesquite coals. Oh, I am so hungry. Well, it's not just beef. As many of you know, I grow my own chicken down in the laundry room, and it's delicious. This is a shot of the lab in the communal laundry room inside my apartment building. The neighbors are afraid of progress. They're constantly complaining to the landlord. But hey, it's a rent-controlled building in New York City. It's impossible to throw me out, and you can't stop progress. I am growing cruelty-free chicken. Watch what happens when I feed my lab-grown chickens. You just turn on the Bunsen burners. Here, watch. And then, of course, I grow lab-grown, cruelty-free chicken soup made from a lab-grown chicken that you just saw. Here come the matzo balls. Wait for it. There they are, the matzo balls. Those are lab-grown, cruelty-free matzo balls. And this is kosher chicken soup, lab-grown kosher chicken soup in the making. And let's see, where are the matzo balls? Let's see, I'm looking for the matzo balls. They're not coming. Oh, that's right. He's having an argument with the other lab-grown kosher chicken. His neighbor seems to be arguing that the amniotic fluid is too warm. The other one is saying there's a draft. That's what I'm being told. That you're immersed in a slew of a liquid amino acid, and you're complaining that it's too drafty. How can there be a draft inside an amniotic sack? I don't understand it. No kosher matzo balls. Well, I am getting hungry. I'm going to have to wrap up the show. And I have a feeling most of my listeners would be thrilled if I did. The United Arab Emirates warning Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to annex the West Bank, where right now more than 500,000 Jewish settlers are living, despite the West Bank, along with Gaza, being designated as prime real estate for the Palestinians if and when a two-state solution is ever finalized. Benjamin Netanyahu this year declared he has no intention of creating a two-state solution, and he promised that as long as he's the prime minister of Israel, the Palestinians will never have their own homeland. The United Arab Emirates were signatories to the Abraham Accords, ironed out at the end of the first Trump administration back in 2020. It set the stage for normalization of relations between Israel and other Arab states, including Saudi Arabia. After receiving this week's warning from the UAE, Netanyahu seems to have backed off his threats to reoccupy and then annex the West Bank, although many in his coalition government, the hardliners, want that. Netanyahu was supposedly shocked and surprised by the UAE's threat. Really, Benjamin Netanyahu caught off guard and by surprise. That's shocking considering how prepared he was on October 7th, 2023. The New York Times reporting that Bobby Kennedy, our nation's unhinged director of Health and Human Services, has killed an internal study showing the link between one glass of alcohol each day and cancer. The Alcohol Intake and Health Study saying one drink a day exposes people to liver cirrhosis as well as oral and esophageal cancer. The Times broke that story about the study in January, and we are now being told this report is sitting inside Health and Human Services, and Kennedy has no intention of making it public or showing it to Congress. Kennedy has a problem with big pharma, considering where the Kennedy fortune came from. He obviously has no problem with big alcohol. His grandfather, Joe, was a bootlegger, a mobster, who sold illegal scotch. Gangster. Kennedy, father was a gangster. Didn't start with Trump. The Kennedys, if you're willing to look the other way, they're fine, but Joseph Kennedy, gangster. Like a legitimate gangster. Jerome Adams, who was Surgeon General during the first Trump administration, calling on the president to fire Kennedy. Adams said, quote, "I absolutely believe Kennedy is uniquely damaging the credibility of federal agencies like the CDC, the National Institutes of Health, the Food and Drug Administration, and he's putting all of us at risk." Florida's Surgeon General announcing that he is taking steps to eliminate vaccine mandates for all students at public schools in Florida. Dr. Joseph Ladapo, who was appointed Surgeon General by Ron DeSantis in 2021, said vaccine mandates, quote, "drip with disdain and slavery." Slavery. Vaccine mandates drip with disdain and slavery. He's comparing vaccine mandates to slavery. I guess you can get away with saying something that stupid in a state where it's against the law to teach critical race theory. You're not allowed to teach about the horrors of slavery, so the Surgeon General can get away with calling vaccine mandates slavery. California, Oregon, and Washington announcing they have formed a health alliance that will come up with medical guidance separate from Bobby Kennedy's Health and Human Services. Governors from all three of those blue states are Democrats. They claim Bobby Kennedy is peddling junk science and partisan ideology instead of real fact-based medicine. On Saturday, the governor of New York State, Kathy Hochul, signed into law a bill mandating that all pharmacies must make the COVID vaccine available to all residents of New York State, all residents who are 3 years or older. Because of confusion from Bobby Kennedy's CDC, the COVID vaccine is not available in all 50 states without a prescription for anyone under the age of 65. It's gotten harder for people under the age of 65 to just walk into Walgreens or CVS and get their COVID shot. And Kennedy says you can get the shot, but your insurance company, as Elizabeth Warren pointed out during the hearing, said it's going to cost you $200 if you're under the age of 65 in some states. Donald Trump telling reporters Friday that he supports vaccines. Trump was asked about Florida Republicans attempting to eliminate vaccine mandates. Trump said, quote, "You have some vaccines that are so incredible, and I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to get vaccinated." Well, then fire Kennedy. He talks through both sides of his ass, Donald Trump. Trump went on to say, it's a tough stance. Look, you have vaccines that work. They're not controversial at all. Really, they're not controversial. Have you talked to Bobby Kennedy? Did you watch the testimony? Trump went on to say, I think the vaccines should be used. Then fire Kennedy. Trump has reportedly complained privately that he wishes he could take credit for Operation Warp Speed, which created the vaccine during his last year in office. Trump saying, confiding with donors, I can't mention Warp Speed or that I'm responsible for the vaccine. Otherwise, my supporters will turn on me. Well, you've cultivated morons, uneducated morons. A new Washington Post poll shows 82% of Florida parents approve vaccine mandates for measles and polio. If the Florida governor and Surgeon General have their way, those mandates will disappear. It's freedom. It's all medical. They're calling it medical freedom to give other kids life-threatening diseases. The United States, well, we thought we eliminated measles 25 years ago, but thanks to Bobby Kennedy, it has come roaring back in places like West Texas, which have some of the lowest vaccination rates in the country, thanks to Bobby Kennedy, who Caroline Kennedy calls a predator. Now, she didn't specify what she meant by predator, but I think we can read between the lines. We have someone who was a heroin addict for 12 years, afraid of shots, all of a sudden. I mean, I'm glad he's rehabilitated, but I don't know. He is damaged. September 11th is next week, and Donald Trump is reportedly looking into how he can gain control of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum here in Manhattan. The New York Times says that museum turns a profit. It spends $84 million a year while taking in $93 million a year. So apparently Trump wants to get his hands on that so it starts losing money. This is what Trump is doing. He's trying to take control of museums. He's trying to take control of the Smithsonian, even though he's not congressionally authorized to run the Smithsonian. And now he wants to control the 9/11 Memorial. I'm guessing he wants to change its name to Ground Trump. Donald, give it time. Just wait, be patient. When you take into consideration all these budget cuts to FEMA and your complete incompetence and the stupidity of everyone you hire, pretty soon you're going to have your very own ground zero that you can take credit for. You don't need George W. Bush's ground zero. You're going to have plenty of other ground zeros that you can attach your name to. America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, Mr. 9/11, fresh out of the hospital, after last week's horrific car crash. He's back and healed. What are your thoughts about Trump taking over the 9/11 museum?
Now the woman just down the wall. That.
You can download the Rudy Giuliani podcast wherever horrible podcasts are heard. Well, that museum, the 9/11 museum, is turning a profit. They don't need Trump, especially since ticket sales for the Kennedy Center are plunging ever since Trump took it over earlier this year. There are reports that some dance companies are playing to houses that are only 6% full. 6%. I don't know. Look, this is these guys from the Staten Island Ballet Company performing an all-male version of Swan Lake. I think they're absolutely delightful. And for some reason, ticket sales were flat this season at the Kennedy Center because Donald Trump is putting on a non-union, all-white production of The Color Purple starring Scott Baio and Everybody Loves Raymond's Patricia Heaton. Who doesn't want to see an all-white version of The Color Purple starring Scott Baio, Chachi, and the right-wing harpy from Everybody Loves Raymond? 3 people showed up to the Kennedy Center for Donald Trump's all-white production of Dreamgirls, starring Roseanne Barr and Kid Rock. Who wouldn't want to see that? I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Please share this episode with your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your aunts, your uncles, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and even your dead grandparents. In fact, I have my dead grandmother wants to talk. Hang on. Where is she? All right. I thought. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. Please leave a comment. I read all your comments. I guess that covers everything. I'm going to do. Okay. Somebody wants to see this again. Donald Trump eating his KKK chicken. Where's the, this was great. Hang on. Let's go big here. This is from the barbecue. This is my lab-grown beef patties. How could you not want to buy David Feldman's cultivated meat? Oh man, I am having a low blood sugar attack. I am so hungry. I am having a low blood sugar attack. All right, maybe I'll do a show tomorrow, depending. This takes up a lot of my energy. Did I cover everything? Thank you for watching.